So, if you're listening to this right now, I want you to picture something. In a typical, 350 word advanced C1 German essay, roughly 60% of the words you write are actually going to come from a tiny, very specific pool of just 200 base words.
Yeah, just 60% right off the bat.
I mean, 60%. You could literally be writing about climate change or the future of artificial intelligence or, the 4-day work week. And more than half of your essay is just drawn from the exact same short list of structural vocabulary.
It's wild. It completely reframes how you look at fluency, I think. Because we're all conditioned to believe that reaching an advanced level, whether that's for the German TOEIC C1 exam or
Wow.
just trying to hold your own in a corporate boardroom in Frankfurt, requires you to basically swallow the dictionary whole.
Right. You imagine this just impossible mountain of flashcards.
Exactly. But the reality of academic and professional language is, well, it's much more repetitive and honestly, much more manageable than we think.
And, if you're listening to this deep dive right now, you're probably on that language journey yourself, right? And when you hear a term like C1 level, your heart rate might spike a little bit.
Oh, for sure. It sounds incredibly intimidating.
It really does. But today, we actually have our hands on that specific master key, this core structural vocabulary that essentially builds the skeleton of a high-level German essay, which is known as the Schriftlicher Ausdruck.
The written expression, yeah.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to take that intimidation completely out of the equation. We are going to slow way, way down today.
I love that because the worst thing you can do when trying to absorb foundational language is to panic,
Yeah.
and try to cram it all in at
Oh,
once.
absolutely.
So our approach today is going to be deliberately relaxed. The goal isn't for you to furiously take notes or stress about memorizing a list.
No, not at all. We want these words and the concepts behind them to just sort of wash over you. Like if you're walking the dog right now, commuting to work, or just staring at the ceiling, just listen and absorb.
Yeah, just let it sink in.
We're going to introduce the English concept, slowly explore the German equivalent, understand how it's built, and use it in context. We really want you to let your ear tune to the rhythm of these words. And, if you're in a place where you can speak out loud, please practice saying them with us.
Definitely. Because the secret we're exploring today is that advanced fluency isn't about knowing every single obscure noun in the German language. I mean, it's really about the total, unshakable mastery of a select few structural pillars.
The base words.
Right. And by mastering these 200 base words, you also unlock their variations. So turning nouns into verbs, verbs into adjectives, suddenly you have this working vocabulary of 500 to 600 highly active items.
Which means you eliminate that terrifying moment in the middle of an exam or a presentation where your mind just goes totally blank and you're frantically searching for a word.
Because the scaffolding is already built before you even walk into the room.
I love that word, scaffolding. It's everything.
It really is. And no matter what topic you're handed on test day, every single essay begins in the exact same place, which is you have to take a stance. You have to establish an opinion.
Which is logically the best place for us to start. So let's look at the absolute foundation of taking a stance. Our source focuses heavily on the concept of word families, so that triad of noun, verb, and adjective.
Right.
Let's explore the German concept for opinion. We're going to take this nice and slow.
Okay, so the core noun here is die Meinung, the opinion, die Meinung.
Die Meinung.
And this naturally connects to the verb meinen, which translates it to mean or to be of the opinion.
Meinen.
Yeah, so if you want to say, I think that, or I'm of the opinion that, you use meinen.
So if I'm sitting down to write the opening sentence of my C1 essay, I might start with a phrase like meiner Meinung nach, meaning, in my opinion.
Exactly. That phrase is a non-negotiable anchor, meiner Meinung nach. You're basically telling the reader or the evaluator that you understand the rules of engagement. You're claiming your perspective.
Right, you're setting the stage.
But often, at an advanced level, a simple opinion isn't quite strong enough. You need to demonstrate real conviction.
Okay, so let's look at the vocabulary for conviction, because this feels like a richer, heavier concept than just an opinion.
It is. The noun for conviction is die Überzeugung. Die Überzeugung.
Die Überzeugung. Say that with me if you're listening. Die Überzeugung. And the verb form, to convince someone.
That is Überzeugen. And the etymology here is really vivid, actually.
Oh, I love a good origin story for a word.
Right. So Über means over. And Zeuge comes from the concept of bearing witness or testifying. So when you have an Überzeugung, or when you try to überzeugen someone, you are essentially over-testifying.
Over-testifying. Wow.
Yeah, you're making your case so powerfully with such overwhelming witness that they just have to agree with you.
Over-testifying. That paints such a clear, vivid picture of what a convincing argument is actually supposed to do. Die Überzeugung. And if you've convinced someone so thoroughly, you remove all the doubt, right? Which brings us to a really fantastic structural word, without a doubt.
The German word for this is zweifellos.
Zweifellos.
And we can break this right down to its mechanics, nice and slow. The root is the noun der Zweifel, which means doubt, der Zweifel.
To Zweifel.
And the suffix zweifellos functions exactly the same way the suffix los does in English. It literally means without.
Oh, so you take the doubt, der Zweifel, add los, and you get zweifellos. Doubtless, without a doubt.
You see this pattern everywhere in German vocabulary. Once you get the hang of it and you recognize that zweifellos removes the thing it's attached to, you don't just learn one word, right? You learn a formula.
That is so helpful. But, I have to admit, looking at words like die Meinung or Zweifellos, they feel very familiar, almost basic.
I get what you're saying, yeah.
Like if a listener is aiming for a C1 certification, which is, quite advanced, shouldn't they be trying to impress the grader with highly obscure 20-letter philosophical terms? Like, if I want to sound highly educated, shouldn't I be digging up words from 19th century literature?
It's funny because the instinct to reach for complex, obscure vocabulary is incredibly common among language learners. But it completely misunderstands what fluency actually is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the examiner marking your essay is not running a trivia contest to see if you know some rare word for an abstract concept. They are evaluating your ability to construct a cohesive, logical, and natural-sounding argument.
So they are looking at the mortar, not the bricks.
That's a great way to put it. Fluency is the automatic deployment of structural words. If you use a highly obscure noun, but you stumble over the basic phrasing to express your opinion about it, the illusion of fluency shatters instantly.
Right. It just sounds clunky.
Exactly. You have to be able to comfortably write, Ich bin der Überzeugung, dass. I am of the conviction that if that frame is solid, the grader knows you own the language.
Okay, so we've laid the foundation. We have stated our opinion with conviction. But obviously an essay is not a diary entry. You can't just shout your opinion into the void and expect a passing grade.
Right, you need backup.
Yeah, you have to build the house around that opinion, which means we naturally have to start introducing points and navigating the opposite side of the issue.
Because in any academic or professional setting, you're expected to navigate debate. A C1 essay almost invariably requires you to weigh contrasting viewpoints. You really have to prove that you can see the whole board, not just your own side.
Okay, let's build a mock scenario as we go through this vocabulary. Let's say our essay prompt is about the impact of a 4-day work week. We've stated our opinion. Now we need to introduce our core arguments. What is the fundamental building block of an argument?
It all starts with the reason. The noun for reason is der Grund.
Der Grund.
Think of it literally as the ground, the foundation upon which your argument stands.
Der Grund.
Der Grund. And to turn that ground into an action, like to justify something or give a reason for it, we use the verb begründen. By adding the prefix be to the noun Grund, we create a transitive verb, to ground something, to justify it. Begründen.
Begründen. So in our essay, I might say, I need to justify this opinion. Ich muss diese Meinung begründen.
Exactly. And when you justify it, you are inevitably going to look at the pros and cons, the advantages and the disadvantages of the 4-day work week.
Right. This is a classic pairing that every learner needs in their toolkit. Pros and cons.
So the noun for advantage is der Vorteil.
Der Vorteil.
And the noun for disadvantage is der Nachteil. Der Nachteil.
Let's let the rhythm of those sit for a second. Der Vorteil. Der Nachteil. There's a very clear logic to how those are built, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. The German language is wonderfully modular here. The root word Teil simply means part or piece. For means before or forward, so the pro. And nach means after or behind the con.
The forward part and the after part.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Advantage and disadvantage.
Der Vorteil. Der Nachteil. Okay, so we have our pros and cons. But what happens when we encounter a complete clash of ideas in our essay? When someone on the other side of the 4-day workweek debate just completely disagrees, we need the vocabulary for contradiction.
Yes. The noun for contradiction is der Widerspruch.
Der Widerspruch.
The prefix wider means against, and Spruch relates to a saying or the act of speaking, to speak against. der Widerspruch.
And the action of contradicting.
Following that exact same logic, the verb is widersprechen, to speak against. Widersprechen.
Widersprechen. So I'm writing my essay, and I have my opinion, my advantages, my disadvantages, and these contradictions. If I just slam all of these opposing ideas next to each other, the essay is going to read like a disjointed mess. I need a way to pivot gracefully between them.
You definitely need structural transition phrases, and the absolute classic, the one you will rely on time and time again to weigh two sides, is the pairing for on one hand, on the other hand.
Ah, this is an essential steering wheel for the essay.
It is. The phrase is einerseits. Einerseits.
Let's slow that down. Einerseits. Andererseits.
If we pull those words apart, einer means one, Seite means side. The ADS at the end turns it into a directional adverb. On the one side, einerseits.
Einerseits.
And anderer means other. On the other side, anderseits.
Einerseits, andererseits. So, einerseits ist die Vier-Tage-Woche gut. On one hand, the 4-day work week is good. Andererseits ist sie teuer. On the other hand, it is expensive. It lets you hold both ideas without crashing the sentence.
Exactly. It's very smooth.
But let me challenge this a little. If a listener is just starting to push into more advanced territory, words like Widersprechen or Andererseits might feel a bit heavy. Can't they just use the word aber? I mean, it means but, and it gets the job done, right?
Well, the word aber is perfectly correct grammar, and in casual conversation, it's exactly what you use. However, the context of a C1 exam or a formal professional document demands elevation.
Elevation in the tone.
Right. When you use a simple aber, it reads as a mere reaction. I like this, but I don't like that. It's a bit flat. When you use a word like jedoch, which means however, or when you explicitly name their Widerspruch, the contradiction, you elevate the discourse from a reaction to an analysis.
Ah, I see.
You're demonstrating to the evaluator that your brain is capable of holding two complex, conflicting thoughts simultaneously and exploring the friction between them.
It changes the posture of the writer from someone who's just, listing thoughts to someone who is actively analyzing a situation.
And analysis is what separates a proficient speaker from a master.
Wow. And if we're analyzing a situation, we naturally have to look at cause and effect. We've established the contrast, the einerseits and andererseits. Now we have to explain why these advantages and disadvantages exist in the first place and how much they matter. So we move from the structure of the debate to the engine of logic that drives it.
Exactly. Our source material groups the vocabulary for cause and consequence alongside the vocabulary for evaluation. And it notes that this specific evaluation toolkit is deployed constantly by successful writers.
Let's drill into the logic of cause and consequence. Very slowly. If we're arguing that a 4-day work week causes higher productivity, we need the word for cause.
The noun is die Ursache.
Die Ursache.
The prefix is a really powerful tool in German. It signifies something primal, ancient, or foundational, the origin point. So die Ursache is the foundational thing, the cause.
And to turn that origin point into an action, the verb to cause.
We add the active prefix verursachen.
Verursachen. Verursachen. Die 4-Tage-Woche verursacht weniger Stress. The 4-day work week causes less stress. And if it causes something, that means there's an impact or an effect.
Right. The word for impact or effect is die Auswirkung. Die Auswirkung.
Wait, I can hear the word for work hidden inside that one.
It's right in the middle. Wirken means to work or to take effect. Aus means out. The outworking, the tangible effect that something has out in the real world. Die Auswirkung.
Die Auswirkung. That makes so much sense. So we have our cause, die Ursache, and our effect, die Auswirkung. Now we have to evaluate those effects. We have to tell the grader how important they are.
The adjective for important is a word most learners encounter very early on, actually. Wichtig.
Wichtig. Important.
But to elevate this for an academic essay, we often need the noun form, the importance. To create this, we use the suffix keit, the Wichtigkeit.
Die Wichtigkeit, the importance. So anytime I see that Keit at the end of a word, I am looking at a noun that was probably built out of an adjective.
Yes, it's a highly reliable rule. It functions beautifully, much like adding -ness in English.
Yeah.
Happy becomes happiness. Wichtig becomes Wichtigkeit.
Okay, let's add one more vital concept to our logic engine, the idea of lacking something. When evaluating a societal issue, we often point out what is missing.
The noun for a lack or shortage is der Mangel. Der Mangel.
Der Mangel. Let that wash over you. Der Mangel.
And the corresponding verb is simply Mangel, to lack.
Mangel.
Mangel. So we have Ursache, Auswirkung, Wichtigkeit, and Mangel. These words are like the heat that cooks the ingredients of the essay together. They create the causal chain.
Exactly.
But this is where the source material introduces something fascinating to me. It provides specific, reusable phrase patterns, stock phrases. For example, instead of just using the verb, it suggests learning the entire chunk. Eine zentrale Rolle spielt, which means plays a central role, or es mangelt an, meaning there is a lack of.
Yes, chunks of language.
I have to ask, though, doesn't memorizing stock phrases like that border on cheating? Won't an examiner read eine zentrale Rolle spielt and think, oh, this student just memorized a phrase book?
It's a very common anxiety, honestly, but viewing it as cheating misunderstands how cognitive processing works during language production. In applied linguistics, we refer to these memorized chunks as linguistic scaffolding.
Scaffolding, like the temporary structure around a building. Exactly. Imagine the mental state of a student taking a C1 exam. The clock is relentlessly ticking. You're trying to formulate a complex argument about remote work. You are monitoring your adjective endings, your word order, and your spelling.
It's overwhelming.
Your cognitive load is pushed to its absolute maximum.
The brain only has so much RAM to dedicate to the task.
That's a perfect analogy. By memorizing a complex, perfectly structured chunk of language, like es mangeltan, knowing intrinsically that mangled requires the preposition an, followed by the dative case, you bypass the need to assemble that grammar from scratch. You drop the pre-built scaffold into the sentence.
And that frees up your mental RAM.
It frees up your cognitive resources so you can focus entirely on the content of the sentence. You can focus on what society is lacking rather than stressing over the mechanical gears of the prepositional case. The examiner doesn't see a robot. They see a writer who has such control over the language that they can deploy complex phrasing fluidly.
That reframes it completely. It isn't a shortcut to avoid learning. It's a tool to facilitate higher-level thinking. You preassemble your tools so you can focus on building the house.
Precisely.
And speaking of the house, we have an incredibly solid frame now. We have opinions, contrast, causes, and consequences. But an essay needs actual substance. We have to ground all of this abstract logic in the real world.
This brings us to the vocabulary of evidence and societal themes. Our source outlines the words needed for giving examples, and critically, it reveals a pattern in the topics chosen for these advanced exams.
This was a huge revelation to me when I read it. The prompts for the C1 exam aren't completely random. They almost exclusively circle around 4 macro themes: the world of work, the media landscape, the environment, and digitalization.
Which is great news, because if you know the battleground, you can choose your weapons carefully. You don't need vocabulary for 1,000 different scenarios. You just need the vocabulary to discuss modern society. Let's start with the tools to prove a point within those themes. The word for proof. Okay. The noun is der Beweis. And the verb, to prove, is beweisen. Beweisen.
So if I am writing my essay on the 4-day work week, I might write, Die Studie beweist das. The study proves that.
Perfect. And sometimes you don't just want to logically prove something, you want to paint a picture of it. You want to illustrate it. The German word for to illustrate is an absolute masterpiece of vocabulary building.
I am looking at it in the notes right now, and it is a formidable word. Let's take it apart slowly. The word is veranschaulichen.
Veranschaulichen. Let's look at the machinery inside this word. The core root is the verb schauen, which means to look.
Schauen, to look.
From that, we get the adjective anschaulich, which describes something that is vivid, graphic, or easy to look at and understand.
Anschaulich, look at a lopal. Vivid.
Finally, we wrap that adjective in a prefix and a suffix. The ver at the beginning and the n at the end work together to indicate the process of making something happen. So veranschaulichen literally means the process of making something vivid and easy to look at. To illustrate.
Anschaulichen, to make something look honorable.
Isn't it great?
It is. When you understand the roots, it stops being a random string of letters and becomes a perfectly logical description of an action. So we use veranschaulichen to illustrate our points about society. And what is the word for society itself?
The collective society is die Gesellschaft. Die Gesellschaft.
The suffix schaft here works a lot like the English suffix, right? Like in friendship or fellowship. It denotes a collective state of being.
Exactly. Die Gesellschaft is the collective. And society is never static, is it? It's always moving, which means we must discuss its development. The noun for development is die Entwicklung. Die Entwicklung.
Die Entwicklung. Let's practice that. Die Entwicklung.
The imagery behind this word is quite poetic, actually. The root relates to wickeln, which means to wind or to wrap. Think of wrapping a bandage. The prefix signifies an undoing or a reversal.
So entwicklung is the unwinding, the unfolding of something.
The unfolding, development. And the verb form, to develop, is entwickelt. Entwickeln.
Die Gesellschaft, die Entwicklung. Entwickeln. Okay, so words like Digitalisierung, which is digitalization, or Umwelt, the environment, these aren't just background details. They are the main characters of the C1 essay. But this raises a question about how we study.
What do you mean?
Well, why are highly specific nouns like die Digitalisierung or die Globalisierung included on a master list that is supposed to be about general essay structure? Shouldn't a master list just give me the verbs and the transition words and let me supply my own nouns?
Ah, I see. It reveals a profound truth about modern language testing and, frankly, about what it means to be considered fluent in the modern world. Achieving a C1 level isn't just a test of grammatical mechanics. It's a test of advanced adult literacy.
Meaning you have to be able to talk about what adults talk about.
Exactly. The examiner will never ask you to describe your favorite holiday or your weekend plans. They are testing your ability to evaluate macro-level shifts in human behavior. Words like Digitalisierung or Globalisierung are not niche, optional vocabulary. They represent the unavoidable realities of the Gegenwart, the present era.
Right. They are everywhere.
If you lack the vocabulary to name the massive forces currently shaping the way humans live and work, you simply cannot participate in an advanced discourse.
You have to possess the language of the era you live in. I mean, you can't write a convincing essay about the modern workplace without using the word digitalization.
And whenever you discuss these massive societal shifts, you inevitably encounter friction. Society does not develop smoothly. There is always pushback, unintended consequences, and struggle.
Which brings us to the narrative core of almost every essay: conflict and resolution. Where there is a society, there are problems. And where there are problems, the essay writer must step in and propose solutions. This is like the classic hero's journey. It's just played out in academic German.
That's exactly what it is.
We meet the monster, and then we have to defeat it.
So the vocabulary of conflict is essential. Let's look at the concept of a challenge. The noun is another beautifully constructed, heavy German word.
Die Herausforderung.
Die Herausforderung.
Die Herausforderung. It sounds imposing. Let's break down why.
Heraus implies an outward motion, out of something. Fordern is a strong verb meaning to demand. So a Herausforderung is a situation or a circumstance that demands something out of you. It calls you out.
A situation that demands something out of you. That is a brilliant way to conceptualize a challenge. And the verb form.
Herausfordern, to challenge. Herausfordern.
Die Herausforderung. Herausfordern. And when a society faces a massive challenge, it creates stress, doesn't it? It creates a heavy load. What is the vocabulary for that burden?
The word for burden or stress is die Belastung. Die Belastung.
Wait, I can hear last right in the middle of it?
Good ear. Die Last is the load, or the physical weight. Belasting is the active state of having that weight applied to you, the psychological or societal burden.
So the digitalization of the workplace creates a Herausforderung, which places a Belastung on the workers.
Exactly.
We have established the monster. Now, the hero of the essay has to vanquish it. We need the vocabulary of resolution. And here we have a perfect example of that noun, verb, adjective triad in action.
The noun for the solution is die Lösung. Die Lösung.
Die Lösung. And the verb, to solve.
Lösen. Lösen.
And if we want to describe a problem as solvable, we need the adjective.
We attach the suffix bar, which functions exactly like embl in English. Lösbar. Solvable.
Die Lösung. Lösen. Lösbar. It is so satisfying to see the language click together like that.
Finally, to reach that solution, you have to take action. You have to implement a measure. The noun is die Maßnahme. Die Maßnahme.
Die Maßnahme. And our source material specifically suggests learning the full phrase, to take measures.
Right. The verb that traditionally pairs with Maßnahme is ergreifen, which means to firmly grasp or to seize. Maßnahmen ergreifen, to take measures.
Maßnahmen ergreifen, I love the physical imagery there. You don't just gently adopt a measure, you grip it.
You seize it, yeah.
But I want to circle back to a nuance regarding conflict. I notice both das Problem, the problem, and die Herausforderung, the challenge, are on our core list. Now, in English, especially in corporate culture, we are often coached to avoid the word problem. We use challenge to sound polite and proactive. Like, we don't have a massive supply chain problem. We have an exciting supply chain challenge.
Right, the corporate spin.
Does that same psychological nuance exist in German?
It absolutely does, and it plays a critical role in how the evaluator perceives the tone of your essay. The word problem is static. It describes a roadblock, A problem just sits there, blocking your path.
It's dead end.
But die Herausforderung, because it literally contains the verb to demand, is inherently dynamic. It demands a response. When you frame a societal issue in your essay as a Herausforderung rather than just a problem, you are signaling a proactive mindset. It shows critical thinking.
Ah,
It sets the stage naturally for the next paragraph, where you will inevitably propose the Maßnahmen required to overcome it.
choosing Herausforderung over problem actually acts as a structural bridge to your solutions paragraph. The vocabulary choice dictates the flow of the argument.
It creates momentum in your writing.
And once you have built that momentum, introduced the conflict, weighed the contrasting arguments, and proposed your measures to solve it, the journey of the essay must come to an end. We have to gracefully exit the conversation while demonstrating total linguistic control. This brings us to the grand finale, conclusions and the power of high-frequency verbs.
Our source provides the essential vocabulary for summarizing and concluding, alongside the everyday workhorse verbs that keep a text moving. Let's look at the exit strategy first, the noun for summary.
The word is die Zusammenfassung. Die Zusammenfassung. Let's unspool that one.
Zusammen means together,
Zusammen, together.
and fassen means to grasp, to catch, or to hold. So Zusammenfassung is the act of grasping everything together, reaching out, grabbing all the disparate threads of your argument, and holding them in one unified fist. The summary.
Grasping together, die Zusammenfassung. What a great image. And the verb, to summarize?
Zusammenfassen. Zusammenfassen.
So, zusammenfassend lässt sich sagen. To summarize, one can say. And what about the final conclusion, the ultimate takeaway?
The noun is das Fazit. Das Fazit.
Das Fazit. And the phrase we use to draw a conclusion.
Ein Fazit ziehen. To pull or draw a conclusion.
Ein Fazit ziehen.
Das Fazit. Ein Fazit ziehen. Now let's touch on a few of the high-frequency verbs. The words that don't belong to a specific theme but are required to describe trends and relationships. How do we say that a text deals with or is about a certain topic?
The verb is handeln. Handeln. It is almost always paired with the prepositions von or handeln form.
Handel von. Dieser Text handelt von der Digitalisierung. This text deals with digitalization, and if we're talking about society, we're always talking about trends going up and down. The verbs for increase and decrease.
To increase is zunehmen. Zunehmen. Zu meaning two or more, and nehmen meaning to take. To take more. Zunehmen.
Zunehmen.
Yes.
To decrease.
Abnehmen. Abnehmen. Ab meaning away or off. To take away. Abnehmen.
Zunehmen. Abnehmen. They are structural opposites, built on the same verb. It's incredibly elegant.
It really is.
Now, as we approach the end of our own deep dive, we must address the final and perhaps most vital piece of advice from our source material. The author explicitly states that mastering a concept called Nominalisierung is the definitive marker of a C1 language level.
Nominalisierung.
Nominalization.
It sounds incredibly academic. The definition is simply turning verbs into nouns, but when you look at it in practice, it feels like a linguistic magic trick. You take a dynamic action word, wave a wand, and pull out a dense, heavy noun. Why is this specific grammatical trick the ultimate key to advanced German?
Because it represents a fundamental shift in register, the style, and tone of the language. In English and in everyday spoken German, we rely on verbs to drive communication. Verbs are energetic. We might say, because society is developing so quickly, we must solve the problem.
It feels active, developing, solve.
But academic, formal, and bureaucratic German, which is exactly the register expected in a C1 schriftlicher Ausdruck, prefers a different architecture. It prefers a style that is dense, objective, and heavily reliant on nouns. This is the nominal style. Nominalisierung.
So how do we translate that active sentence into a C1 nominal style? Instead of, we must solve the problem, what do we say?
You extract the action from the verb lösen, to solve, and freeze it into the noun die Lösung, the solution. You write, die Lösung des Problems ist erforderlich. The solution of the problem is necessary.
Die Lösung des Problems. You freeze the action into a concept.
You package the action into a neat conceptual box. It removes the personal we from the sentence. It makes the statement sound like an objective, undeniable fact rather than a personal endeavor.
Let's try another one with the vocabulary we learned today. Instead of saying because the company is developing, using the verb entwickeln.
You would use the noun die Entwicklung aufgrund der Entwicklung des Unternehmens, due to the development of the company.
Ah, I see why the source stressed the noun, verb, adjective triad so heavily at the beginning. If I only study the verb entwickeln, I am trapped in a conversational style. I can only say it develops. But if I know die and twickling, I have the building block required to construct a dense academic sentence.
Exactly. The nominalization proves you aren't just translating English thoughts into German words. You are actually thinking in the structural rhythms of academic German.
I understand the mechanics of it, but I have to push back on the aesthetics.
Okay, what do you mean?
If I run my entire essay through this nominalizing machine, freezing all my verbs into heavy nouns, aren't I just going to sound like a soulless bureaucrat? It feels like it drains the life out of the writing.
It is a totally valid aesthetic critique for sure. To an English speaker's ear, heavily nominalized German can sound dry, overly formal, and bureaucratic. But we must remember the context of the task. You are not writing a creative short story or an impassioned poem. You are writing a formal essay to prove analytical competence. In the cultural context of German academia and administration, that dense, noun-heavy style equates to objectivity, seriousness, and high education. Sounding like a bureaucrat in this specific scenario is exactly what the grader is rewarding.
So you are playing the game by their cultural rules.
Precisely. You must give the evaluator the register they expect.
That is a profound insight. But there is one final point from our source material that I want to challenge before we wrap up. The author states that out of these 200 base words, a student will realistically only need to deploy about 80 to 100 of them on the actual exam page.
Yeah, that's the stat.
If that is statistically true, aren't we vastly over-preparing? If I only need 80 words, why should I spend weeks letting 200 base words plus all of their variations wash over me? It feels like a massive expenditure of unnecessary energy.
Well, the math makes sense on paper, but that question ignores the psychology of human memory under stress.
The reality of the exam room.
Yes. The exam room is an environment of intense cognitive restriction. Let's say you take the minimalist approach. You perfectly memorize the 80 words you plan to use. You can recite them flawlessly in the comfort of your living room. Then you sit down at the desk. The invigilator starts the clock. The prompt is slightly more complicated than you anticipated.
Oh, the adrenaline kicks in.
And under that adrenaline, under the pressure of the ticking clock, your access to your own memory constricts. If you only studied 80 words, the stress might lock away half of them. Suddenly, you can only recall 40 words.
And you are staring at a blank page, unable to finish a sentence. That sounds like a nightmare.
But if you familiarize yourself with the full 200 base words and you practice the derivations, the nouns, the verbs, the adjectives, you aren't just learning a list. You are building a massive linguistic buffer. You are weaving a web of 500 to 600 active, interconnected items in your brain.
A web of redundancy.
Exactly. If the stress of the moment makes you forget the verb Widersprechen, your brain doesn't panic because it instantly reaches into the web and pulls out the noun der Gegenargument, or the phrase andererseits.
So you learn the full capacity not because you plan to use every single drop, but so you have the absolute, unshakable confidence that the well will never run dry.
The buffer eliminates the fear. And when the fear is gone, you write better, you think clearer, and your natural fluency shines through.
It's the difference between walking a tightrope and walking across a massive reinforced bridge. Both get you to the other side, but one allows you to actually enjoy the view.
Beautifully put.
Well, as we draw our own Fazit today, as we pull our conclusion together, let's briefly recap the immense utility of what we've explored. We didn't just read a vocabulary list today. We explored a blueprint.
A comprehensive blueprint for sounding highly educated, deeply structured, and utterly in control of your German expression.
We looked at the foundation of an opinion with conviction. We explored the architecture of debate, weighing the advantages and disadvantages. We built the engine of logic, connecting cause, consequence, and importance.
Yep, the whole structure.
We populated our essay with the modern realities of society and digitalization. We navigated the friction of challenges and solutions. And finally, we uncovered the academic power of freezing action into nouns.
The core strategy remains. Drill the base forms first. Understand the literal ground the word is built on. And then gently practice the variations.
And for you, the listener, whether you are weeks away from your C1 exam or just preparing for a high-stakes conversation, I strongly encourage you to return to this deep dive. Let this audio play in the background. Listen to the slow, methodical repetition of the concepts. Let the rhythm of words like Die Herausforderung and Veranschaulichen tune your ear.
The more familiar the structure feels in your mind, the more effortlessly it will flow from your pen.
The scaffolding will be ready and waiting for you. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over. something that builds on everything we unpacked today.
Ooh, I am curious. What is it?
Well, we just spent a significant amount of time exploring the revelation that 60% of an advanced, highly educated German essay is comprised of a tiny pool of recycled structural framing. These transition phrases, these verbs of logic, these contrast markers. It makes me wonder about our own native languages. How much of everyday English discourse is built the exact same way?
Oh, that's a great point. We operate under the illusion that we are endlessly creative and spontaneous when we speak our native tongue.
We think every thought is custom built, but try this experiment. The next time you are reading a long-form news article or listening to a politician give a speech or even just sitting in a strategic meeting at your office, try to strip away the highly specific nouns, ignore the specific details about the quarterly budget or the latest geopolitical event. Look past the wallpaper and see if you can spot the skeleton of the argument underneath.
I guarantee you'll find the exact same framework. You will hear the opinions, the contrasts, the underlying causes, the resulting impacts, and the proposed measures.
The vocabulary of logic is universal. Whether you are navigating the strict requirements of a German C1 exam or simply trying to make sense of the complex world around you, the tools we use to build a convincing argument, to balance a contradiction, and to propose a path forward remain the same. The blank page or the silent boardroom doesn't have to be terrifying because the blueprint is already in your hands. You just have to practice the chords.